Hello viewers and welcome again to Discovering Truth, and I am Pastor Forbes from the Gateway Abiding Word Ministries here in the Gambia. I welcome you to the second segment of our discussion on how to know God's voice in your heart and how to make the right decisions. I believe this is one of the most important things we want to learn because we are all making decisions. Yes, we have the minor, daily, mundane, everyday decisions we make that really do not have a major impact on the outcomes of our lives. But then we have the major ones, what I call the destiny impacting, life transforming decisions. And so how do we make decisions? How do you make decisions? What are your guides? What is your template? Or do we just have a hunch and go on it? Or like the kids will say, we do ndoli on doli, doli mamakura, or any, mini, miny, more. No, there must be a way. And you and I know that sometimes you are faced with options that are the same. Job proposals, business proposals. Company A offered you an employment today and you're excited about it. Before midnight, you get another one from Company B, equally good. And you are now wondering, which one should I take? We have those challenges in marital proposal, sometimes even in schooling. What are the 5 key things you're going to look for in choosing a school for your child? And so on and so on. So last week we said these are key because every decision we make obviously has consequences, and we all know because we are all living out consequences of our decisions or decisions made for us. And we all know that consequences far outstrip in size, in timeline, in longevity, in duration, causes. Just look at life, everything, anything, the wars in the world, you go back centuries, or even that decision in the Garden of Eden that Adam and his wife made and partook of something God had told them not to partake of. You know, we live with the consequences till today. Look at Abraham and Sarah. God had promised them that he would do something for them through them. And then time and frustration and the clocks of life and all that, and societal pressure possibly. Maybe, who knows, even marital tension. In our day, it will be voices of in-laws and outlaws and all those who say, we don't tell you. We knew it. We saw it coming. And they made a decision. We live with the consequences till today. So every decision we make has outcomes, consequences, irrespective of what they are. If they are good decisions, we are ready for them. If they are bad decisions, we have to be ready for them. So we read 2 scriptures, if you remember, last week as we started this series. We read a very interesting scripture from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, from verses 1 through 11, and then I talked a bit about 14, and then we read Ecclesiastes, same book, the 9th chapter now, and 1 verse. And I want to go through them quickly. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1 says, to everything there is a season. And that is true. Right now in the Gambia, we're in the rainy season. So it's raining. And that season comes with all kinds of things. In the very least of it, the insects. There is a season. So we know 2 seasons, the rainy season and the dry season. In other worlds, in other nations, they have 4 seasons. They have spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And ladies and gentlemen, as we are in this month of August now, it's summertime. It will be very strange to find somebody wearing woolies and all decked up in winter wear. No. In fact, when you go to the shops, the stores in the world will tell you, pre-season, it's coming. So we know seasons, and seasons bring consequences. There is the Hamatan tells you how to dress and how to get yourself looking good, so we don't have what we call in Gambia mboyo, where you look white. So it says there is a season for everything, and there is a time for every purpose under the earth. So every purpose is linked to its time. Everything, every item, every undertaking, everything is linked to its proper season. So our, if you like, navigation and our quest and our findings should be, I am able to know that this is the thing that should happen in this season, and this is the time for this purpose. Then he gives examples. There's a time to be born. There's a time to die. There's a time. It is foolhardy to think none of us will die. But ladies and gentlemen, between the time of birth and the time of death, all things being equal, there are also other times and seasons. Age 14 is not the season of a boyfriend. Age 15 is not the season for sexual intercourse, etc., etc. It's the season and the time for education, because by the time we get into our 20s and 30s, that season is going to expect that we had gotten in the time that we were, the purpose that we should have gotten in that time, so we can function in this season. And that's how God made it. And the joy about it, as we are sharing, ladies and gentlemen, is that God has not just left us to grapple in the dark. Look at what it says. There's a time to be born, there's a time to die, there's a time to plant, and the time to pluck what is planted. There's a time to kill, there's a time to heal, there's a time to, and by the way, kill does not just mean human, it means destroy something, just get over with something, stop something. There's a time to heal, there's a time to break down, there's a time to build up. There are buildings that, except they are listed, as the term goes in some nations of the world, they have no more practical, purposeful use anymore. You are better off breaking them down and rebuilding something better that adds value. But you must understand the timing. It's like currency speculation. It's like investments, like all the things that go on. You must just know when to do the right thing. Then there's a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance. Wouldn't it be strange if somebody is dancing when they should mourn and mourning when they should dance, and expecting everybody to join them in what they are doing, but they are out of sync with the purpose and the season of the time? Wow. There's a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace something. And it's not just people, maybe it's new technology, new ideas. A time to refrain from embracing. Not everything that comes your way you must take. There's a time to gain, and there's a time to lose. You know, sometimes there's a strategy that in losing you gain more. It reminds me of the experts who play drafts or checkers. You know, we know it as drafts. In Gambia, we'll say damia. You know, if you observe, usually it's maybe an elderly man and a young boy, and, you know, he gives him one and he kills it, he puts it aside, and, you know, the boy gets very excited. And then the older man makes one other move and clears 9 of the players, and then the boy sits up. That's because while he was losing, it was a strategy to gain. That is another subject altogether for another time. There is a time to keep. There's a time to throw away. There's a time to tear. There's a time to sow. I love this. There's a time to keep silence. And there's a time to speak. What joy and progress we will see in our world, in families, in institutions, in marriages, in all kinds of things, in security, in intelligence analysis, in diplomacy, in the media. What joy it will be if everybody knew when to be silent and when to speak. Because not all silence means consent. That's just a nice phrase that we got from Students' Companion and maybe First Aid. Not all silence indicates consent. Sometimes silence is the quiet before the storm. It's deep thinking before action. But you and I must know, because if we talk when we must be silent, we are wasting our breath, dissipating energy, and literally becoming a nuisance in society. But if we are quiet when we should talk, a lot of things will happen. Invariably, they will go wrong. And I'm sure there is a phrase like that, that the reason why evil thrives is because good people are silent. There is some phrase like that. So we must know, when should I speak? When should I be silent? Because there's a time to speak, a time to be silent, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, a time for peace. And verse 11 of this chapter 3 of the book of Ecclesiastes says, God has made everything beautiful. What is something beautiful? It's nice, it's loving, it's endearing, it's something you are proud of, it's something you want to take and keep and embrace and celebrate and talk about. It's beautiful. It is God that has made everything beautiful in its time. So when things are out of their time, they are not beautiful in the estimates of God, and you have to fix them. It's like how people have to spray oxyacetylene on banana to quick ripen it, and some of the technologies that man is making out of greed to get something quick and get something faster. And then sometimes they get consequences that they cannot handle. Because no man is infinite. No brain on this earth is infinite. There is always going to be a blind spot. There is always going to be a mistake somewhere. There is always going to be something you forgot. And that is what we call the X factor. And with every amount of reverence in my life, that X factor that changes the outcome, that variable, is Almighty God and His power. That just when we thought we had it all under control, we had worked it all well, in 2 weeks it will be over, we'll get into this country, do our little operation and come out. I discovered that no, you didn't have all the points coordinated because you are finite. God has made everything beautiful in its time. So my quest and your quest, my question and your question is to find out when is the right time. Is this the right time? How can I know the right time? And that's what we are developing. Then we came to chapter 9 of the same book, Ecclesiastes, and we read verse 11. And it's very descriptive. So verse 11 is saying that people do not win races just because they are swift. People do not win battles just because they are strong. In other words, being swift does not always turn out into victory. Being strong does not always give you the victory in the battle. It even says bread is not given to people who are wise. There are some people who are wise, but as I keep saying that, they are disorganized. And the Bible actually, in this very chapter 9 verse 11, maybe I should even read it. It's only verse 14. Let me read it here. It's just verse 14. It says, there was a little city with few men in it, and a great king came against it, besieged it, built great snares around it, and there was found in it a poor wise man. Can you imagine? It's like an oxymoron. How can a wise man be poor? How can a poor man be wise? It's possible. He was a poor wise man, and he, by his wisdom, not his poverty, by his wisdom delivered the city, yet nobody remembered that same poor man. His wisdom helped him, but his poverty gave him no legacy mention. And so it is saying here, because you are wise does not mean there will be food on your table. There are people who are wise, but the wisdom does not translate into bread. And it says, nor riches to people of understanding. There are people who are there are people who have knowledge. They can read anything. They tell you everything. They are like walking encyclopedia, Britannica, Africa. But when you see, it doesn't turn into riches. Highly intelligent, it doesn't turn into riches. There are people who are skilled. And I said this last Tuesday. I have met very skillful people who somehow just don't get the jobs. Or they get the jobs, they don't last in the jobs. Or their skill has not transformed their lives into advancement and, if you like, even economic prosperity. And it says these 5 things: the race is not to the swift, the battle is not to the strong, bread to the wise, riches to people of understanding, favor to people of skill, is not a given. What is the decider is how they relate to time and opportunity, how they relate to time and chance, how you and I relate to time and chance. And if you remember last week, I said, forgive me to use the term smell. Can you smell timing? Can you smell chance? Can you smell opportunity? We have this phrase, he crossed the bridge at the right time. Are you able to smell the right time? Are you able to discern and discover? Are you able to recognize that this is the right time? Because opportunity and chance and time have come to people. That's why we call it a window of opportunity, or a door of opportunity, of chance. It opens and it closes. It just opened for a short while. And if you can get it now, that's it. So how are we going to do this? How do I know what's my purpose in life? What am I supposed to do? Why am I here? What's going to be my legacy? What should I accomplish? What do I make of my training, my skills, even my motivational gifts, my abilities? What do I make of this burning desire I have to help children? You know, there are people who, they can't see people suffer. There are people who would always do, and that's why sometimes you see a lot of organizations around the world are pro maybe poor, pro disenfranchised, pro orphan, and they're just people who want to change people's lives. They're people who go into communities where the educational indices are low because it's a low housing area, and they try to build proper schools because all the schools are broken down, the play centers are all broken, the swings, the seesaws, the computers, everything. And there have been trial pilot programs like that in nations. I once visited a place in Chicago, in the greater Chicago area. And after 2 years, you could see that the results of the children were improving. Because it's cause and consequence, either way. So how do we use time? How do we use chance and opportunity? How do we go through when that window is open? How do we walk through that door? As I said again, your career, marriage, having a family or not, occupation, travel, investment portfolio, friendships, entrepreneurial partnerships, even trust. How do I decide? Because you see, in the world, everybody will sell you a story. Some stories have turned out good. Look at social media. We've all had the story of something being started in a bedroom, in a garage. $1 trillion IT companies. And maybe there were other people there who didn't see a future, who were just either conservative or very suspicious or non-adventurous. How do we tell? Because what happens to most of us is when we see the success, we say, Bumayegon. If I had known. Why couldn't I see it? This thing evaded me. He came to my house. He told me, let me put just $500 into this thing, and I laughed at him. Today it's worth $2 billion. Sometimes it's buying land, buying property. We are all guilty of that. The land is in Bullock. Who's going to Bullock? Look at how far Banjul is from Bullock. We used to say that about Brufut and Ghana Town many years ago. As a young boy, I remember church picnics and Easter Monday and some of those things were to go to Brufut and Ghana Town, and it looked like a day's journey because the roads were terrible. It's not the same anymore. We have people who live in Brikama and work in Banjul. It's not the same anymore. And yet, as these opportunities come, there are people who either because they are hell-bent on their decision-making processes will remain the same. So even if the window of opportunity was 8 months, they will still not make a decision. Because there are people who feel that I would rather not take a step than to make a decision and fail. And that's commendable until it starts destroying your life. Sometimes it's health issues. You hear the phrase, nip it in the bud. Look, just take this treatment, go abroad for this treatment, go to the hospital, fly next door. So, I know myself. And more often than not, sadly, most people show up when they will tell you it is chronically malignant. This is terminal. It's too late. I know a friend, actually a family relative, who had a friend. And this person used to always tell us, my friend's father is rich. I don't have to go to school. And boy, is that person paying the price now. But the process of making these decisions is what we'll work on. So we are building slowly. How do you know when something is right or wrong to do, or to take, or to agree to, or to accept or not, to be a part of, to participate in, to belong to? Especially those questions and challenges and desires that are not expressly mentioned anywhere. How do I know? Some people say go with your instincts. Some people say go with your gut feeling. We've all done that. Some have worked. Some have landed us into trouble. Some people are just managing now to come out of the hole that they got into. But ladies and gentlemen, when we get to part 3, I trust that we'll start putting dots together and know that this peace in my heart, or the absence of this peace, is a loud voice. Sometimes even this dream that I had is a loud voice. And we will look beyond that so you and I can tell from a relationship with God through the Lord Jesus Christ and by the presence of the guiding of God's Spirit, you and I will tell. You will know. I listened to somebody as I end. Many years ago, he was invited to join a flight, a private jet flight. And he said he just turned it down. And that flight became ill-fated because everybody on that flight perished. And when he was interviewed, this is what he said. I have learned to take note of these little nudgings and stirrings in my heart, and not to move when I don't have peace in my heart. I'll stop here, and by the grace of God, we'll continue. I promise you at least another 2 more segments, so maybe this will be the 4-part series on how to come into the assurance of God's voice in your heart so that you and I can make the right decisions. Not popular decisions, but right decisions, the correct ones. Because the race is not to the swift. The battle is not to the strong. Wisdom is not because you are wealthy. Riches is not because you are skillful. It is how you use time and chance. And we read before that for every purpose and everything, there's a time and a season. So the homework is, do I know the right season? Do I know the right time for this purpose? And if we do that, then we lock into it and all will be well. Until I come your way, by the grace of God next week, have a great day and God bless you. And as I said last week, if you're about making a critical life, destiny impacting decision, you might just want to wait for 1 or 2 more weeks. It may help you. It may help you. God bless us.